Welcome back. You know, sometimes you just want to really understand something, get deep into it, but without getting totally lost in, like, endless details.
Exactly. And that's what we're aiming for today.
We're going to take that focused approach, diving into just one specific year, 1979, in the life of a really interesting Texas artist, Bob Camblin.
And it's great because we actually have quite a bit to work with for 79. There are exhibition reviews from back then, which give you that immediate feel.
Right, the contemporary take.
Yeah, and even some quotes from Camblin himself, which sort of gives us a peek into his own thinking around that time.
Okay, so our mission really is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits, and just get a solid handle on why 1979 was such an important year for him. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
So looking at 1979, what's the first thing that kind of jumps out?
Well, honestly, the sheer amount of activity is pretty striking. The records show he was in 7 different exhibitions that year.
7? Wow.
Yeah, 7, which, tells you this wasn't a quiet year. It suggests a period of really intense exploration for Camblin and also, maybe, trying to establish himself more broadly. He wasn't just, like, making work in isolation.
He was getting it out there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Engaging with different scenes, different themes.
Okay, 7. Let's see if we can list them off. There was Vanitas at Moody Gallery. That was his solo show, right?
That's the one, a big one for him.
Then Fire, an exhibition of 100 Texas artists. Quite a title.
Yep.
21st Annual Invitational Operation Update 1979. Sounds very official. Doors. Houston Artists, another Vanitas show, this one with the Anonymous Box Co.
We should definitely talk about them later.
Okay. And a collaboration. David McManaway works 20 years, plus 5 artists from Texas, and works on paper. Phew. It's a lot to juggle.
It really is. And that first Vanitas show you mentioned, the solo one at Moody, seems like it was really central to what he was thinking about.
The whole Vanitas concept itself, thinking about what personal excess and mortality.
Yeah, basically contemplating life's indulgences, maybe, in the face of death. It's a classic art theme, but he really dug into it with a big oil painting, several watercolors.
And the skull altars. Those sounded particularly fascinating for the descriptions. 3 distinct ones.
That's right. The sources described them pretty vividly. One apparently had black blinds.
Suggesting something hidden or revealed?
Maybe. Another had this draped background, and inside, drawers filled with relics, milagros, those little votive charms.
Oh, right, yeah.
And personal items. So really intimate, almost like memory boxes. And the third was a freestanding sculpture.
And there was a skull print that tied them together.
Seems like it, yeah. A recurring motif across those pieces.
Which immediately brings up that Mexican influence, doesn't it? The sources mention the Day of the Dead connection.
Absolutely. He'd traveled near Oaxaca, and that experience seems to have fed directly into these Vanitas works, the candy skulls, that whole iconography.
So listeners can really see how his travels were shaping the art.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how he blended that with other things. So it wasn't just the Mexican influence. The sources actually connect it back to European art, too, specifically Velázquez.
Las Meninas. How does that connect to skulls?
Well, apparently Camblin saw an echo of the shape of a Mexican skull in the bell-shaped skirts in Las Meninas.
Oh, okay. That's quite a visual leap.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there were other echoes, too. Sometimes his technique, like a shimmering quality.
How did he achieve that? Was it the paint?
The reviews sort of hint at it, maybe thin washes, layering. It apparently reminded people of Venetian waterways, which was another place that had inspired him earlier.
So he's layering these cultural experiences, adapting things, not just copying.
Exactly. Taking folk images or historical art references and filtering them through his own style. You see it in other ways, too, like using painted curtains in some works.
Which gives it that theatrical feel you mentioned,
Yeah.
almost dreamlike.
Yeah, precisely. And the use of sepia tones, making things feel older, like artifacts.
And he wasn't just doing this alone. He was collaborating, too, right, with David Folkman and this Anonymous Box Co.
Right, making these sculptural pieces. They sound fascinating, incorporating his skull lithographs, but also actual objects from Mexico. Bones, dried flowers, candles, all inside these old wooden boxes or structures.
This Anonymous Box Co. What was that exactly? A formal group?
It seems more like an informal thing, A name for these collaborative projects, maybe exploring shared ideas, not necessarily a fixed group.
And the detail in those boxes sounds incredible. One review mentioned a drawer with pottery shards, old bits of type, bullets.
Yeah, bullets, small skulls, beads, milagros. The reviewer said the arrangement itself was like a whole other artwork.
It really makes you think about how different artists' ideas can come together in one piece.
Totally. And then moving beyond those specific collaborations, there was that Doors exhibition.
Ah, yes, the Houston Chronicle singled out his piece. What was the description again?
Something like a punctured and hooked door, braced by ropes and huge stones. They called it one of the best pure artworks in the show.
Wow, that sounds really physical, very sculptural.
Definitely suggests he wasn't afraid to work with unconventional materials or create really imposing objects, taking something ordinary like a door and transforming it.
And he was also doing smaller things too, right?
Like
The postcard series in Longview.
Yeah, so exploring different scales as well, from large installations to, postcard size.
And printmaking was a big part of it too, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. He worked with Little Egypt Enterprises on a Midsummer Night's Dream lithograph. And the really interesting detail there is that he was apparently involved in actually making the paper for it.
Really? That's deep involvement.
It shows a real commitment to the whole process, doesn't it? Not just handing off a design. He also did a skull color lithograph. Some of those ended up in the reliquaries, those box sculptures.
Ah, okay.
And he was doing etchings too with Undermain Studio. So yeah, prints were definitely part of the mix in 79.
A lot of different threads happening. Which brings us to that artist's statement from the Fire catalog. It was unusual.
Ah, yeah, it was. James Searles, from a Bob Camblin, from the center of the anonymous box go. Then that symbol for it's all art.
Right. And then, as far as I can sit, it speaks itself, but we say, thanks, amigos, and let me know if you need any help. What do you make of that?
Well, it's certainly not your standard artist statement, is it? It's playful, maybe a bit cryptic.
Deliberately ambiguous, perhaps? Avoiding spilling things out?
Could be. Or maybe just his personal style. It definitely gives you a feel for his sort of unconventional approach, even in just communicating about the work.
It's a little window into his world. And speaking of that, we also have some of his own reflections. They aren't all dated to exactly 1979, but they give context, right?
Yeah, they help paint a picture of his thinking around this time, like his interest in the balance between science and magic. He called it the perfectly average view.
Allowing for miracles on both sides.
Something like that, yeah. Not seeing them as opposed.
And his ideas about the purpose of art seem really key, especially that shift he talked about, moving from art for art's sake.
Towards art for life's sake, or even art for survival's sake.
That feels significant, like art needing to connect more deeply to do something more vital for the viewer, maybe?
I think so. And it connects to his emphasis on nonverbal communication, too. The idea that art gets at things language can't quite reach.
He also had thoughts on learning, didn't he?
Yeah.
Resisting formal learning.
Yeah, embracing failure, embracing feeling as part of how you create, not just technique or theory.
Which ties into that Zaw's mind idea he mentioned.
Right, letting solutions kind of magically appear when you're not trying too hard, when you're more open.
And that connects nicely to the idea of fooling the eye, fooling the mind. We saw hints of that illusionism in the reviews.
Exactly. Playing with perception was clearly part of his toolkit.
But there also seems to be a tension there in his reflections, this awareness of a disposable art culture.
Yeah, like the pressure for constant novelty. He seems to be grappling with that, how to make work with depth in that kind of environment. Maybe that's partly why he explored collaborations in different forms.
Could be. And he briefly mentions teaching at Rice C, observing the ego. Interesting aside.
And then there's that quote, fortunately, some things remain forever or another 10 years, perhaps.
Acknowledging impermanence, right? Both in life and maybe in art itself.
Yeah, a touch of that Vanitas theme again, perhaps.
And one more quote that stood out about memory. The dredging of memory should only function if it serves to jog the archetype crevices of the reptilian brain.
Wow, that's quite a phrase.
It is. Suggests he wanted his art to tap into something really deep, primal, almost subconscious.
So you put all that together, the sheer output, the complex themes, the collaborations, his own thoughtful reflections. It's a rich picture. What did the critics actually say back in 79?
Well, the reviews we have give some good snapshots. The Houston Post called his works puzzle pictures with a not-so-hidden meaning.
Puzzle pictures. That captures that layered feeling, doesn't it? Something to decipher.
Yeah. And Art Week pointed out the irregular frame within a frame, illusion within illusion in his drawings and watercolors.
Uh-huh. Again, that play with perception, fooling the eye.
They also mentioned rich, illusionistically deep surfaces that hint at presences beyond definite perception.
Ooh, I like that. Presences beyond definite perception. suggests his skill was serving something more mysterious, something intangible.
It really paints a picture of an artist who was technically skilled but also deeply engaged with ideas and maybe the unseen.
For sure. And the final piece of the puzzle, really, underscoring the importance of all this activity in 79.
The Smithsonian.
Exactly. The Archives of American Art collected 440 slides of his work from that period in 1979.
That's significant recognition, isn't it? It says that even at the time, people realized this was an important body of work being created.
Absolutely. A real testament to just how much he accomplished and explored in that one year.
So, okay, let's try and pull this together then. This deep dive into Bob Camblin's 1979 really shows an incredibly productive, dynamic year.
Definitely. You've got the deep dive into vanitas, that clear Mexican influence weaving in with European art history.
The unique collaborative sculptures, those boxes.
Yeah, and his own really thoughtful philosophy coming through in his words.
It really demonstrates how an artist can take all these threads, personal experience, travel, art history, collaboration, and weave them into something uniquely their own, doesn't it?
Yeah, a really rich tapestry, like you said earlier. Lots of layers there for people to explore.
And it leaves you thinking, those themes of vanitas, contemplating mortality, or the way cultures blend in art, or even just that tension between making deep work and a culture demanding novelty.
How relevant are those things today?
Exactly. It's something interesting to mull over. Hopefully this dive has given listeners a real sense of this one artist in this one pivotal year, and maybe spark some curiosity to look further.
Yeah, maybe find some other aha moments out there.